What up? How are you guys? Prudence. A lot of people don't really understand, have a grasp of what prudence is. I didn't, to be honest with you. If you'd have come up to me before and said, hey, give me a definition of prudence, I'd have spat out something that sounded kind of like the dictionary, right? But today I want to look a little bit of my life, where I was prudent and perhaps where I wasn't prudent. Okay, so this is a video. We're switching laptops here and the audio, but I love Jocko Willink. Anybody know who Jocko Willink is? He was a Navy SEAL, and he's super, super intense and motivational. And he has a video, it's called Good. I suggest that you go look it up on YouTube. And he talks about the trials and tribulations of life. You sprained your ankle. Good. Learn from it. You flunked your math test. Good. Learn from it. Study harder. Something goes wrong in your life. You didn't get the job you wanted. Good. Be more prepared. It's about action. So, I get to talk longer because you don't have to listen to that video. So that's cool. So prudence. You guys show that definition, Nathan. The definition, it's the next slide. The definition of prudence, it was already read. The ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason, skill, and good judgment in the use of resources and caution or circumspection as to danger or risk. Prudence enables us to exercise more control over the direction of our lives. With prudence, the vision or foresight that comes with prudence gives us a sensibility or carefulness that enables us to avoid dangerous pitfalls and to learn from our mistakes. So, how does that apply to us? How does that apply to you? Right? That's the question we want to understand today. Chapter 1, the beginning. So, I grew up in southern New Mexico. My biological father left before I was 2. I don't remember him. My mom made $8,000 a year as a secretary for a lumber yard. My older sister, 3 years older than me, Lori, my mom and I lived in a 1-bedroom house. I don't ever remember being hungry. I don't ever remember not having shoes or clothes. I had patches on my knees because I wore the knees out because I played hard, right? But she was a seamstress, and so she would make me fix all my clothes. She would make me clothes, and I remember being embarrassed because wearing these homemade clothes made me shameful because we were poor. But when I was 8, my dad married my mom. And he's not my biological father, but he was my dad. He went out and he found my biological father and made him sign the papers to release me so he could adopt me. His name is on my birth certificate. He's my dad. Right? What a blessing. Now, I was kind of a small guy. In New Mexico, 7th through 8th, 9th grade, those were called junior highs. Okay? And then 10th, 11th, and 12th, that was high school. In 7th grade, I weighed 62 pounds, but I aspired to be bigger. I aspired to live larger. My idols were the cowboys, were the professional athletes. So when I was in 7th grade, I could play football, rough and tumble, right? Bam, bash, all 62 pounds of me. Except there was a rule. You had to be 65 pounds to play football. Oops. So I borrowed the lineman's shoes and I put rocks in them until I could just shove my feet in and put rocks in my pockets. And I got on the scale and I was 64 and a half. It's okay. The guy goes, go ahead, kid. I got to play football. I was a wide receiver and I was a cornerback. And I realized at that point in my life, I was never going to have a career in the NFL. Wasn't going to happen. I was too small. But at that juncture in my life, I found wrestling. Now, my dad had wrestled through high school and college. My uncles had wrestled in college. So when my dad happened to be a referee for high school wrestling, so I traveled all over from the time I was 8. I learned the basics and the fundamentals of wrestling just almost by osmosis. So when I got to put on a singlet for the first time as a 7th grader and actually compete, I was pretty good. Until the Christmas tournament, my 7th year, and I met Daniel Galaz. Daniel was an 8th grader, 65 pounds. Okay? Now you mind, 90% Hispanic in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where I grew up. I thought I was Mexican until I was 11. Okay? I thought my middle name was Wedo. Okay? So for me, going up against Daniel Galaz, I was going to get him. He beat me 7-2. And all of a sudden, the plans that I had, the goals that I had made, which was to win the city championship 3 times, to win the state championship 3 times, to go on to college, to win a national championship, to be an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling. I'd laid that out. I was headed that direction. I had to reevaluate, and I had to step back, and I had to think, okay, does this make sense? Is this possible? I have to change something. Later that season at the city championship, I beat Daniel Galaz in the finals 5-3. And for me, that was the start of something that changed my life. Chapter 2, step by step. Now, I continued to wrestle and found, to be honest, and maybe it was a little bit wrong, but I found some of my identity in that, being so small. Now, I mentioned before that you couldn't wrestle in high school until you were a sophomore. And, I had bulked up to 93 pounds by the time I was a sophomore. The lowest weight in high school wrestling at the time was 98. But Michael Garcia was an 8th grader who had placed in state the year before, and he was varsity. Now, Michael was what nightmares are made out of. He stood about this tall. He had scoliosis, and his legs were really tiny, but he could bench 220 as a 98-pounder. And he had this chin that I remember I would have nightmares about because he would dig it in, right? I had to go and beat him to make varsity because he wasn't going to get bigger. He was going to be 98 pounds still. Well, he's probably still 98 pounds. God bless him. But the thing about that is that summer I started to travel and I started to enter some national tournaments and some different things, and I got better. And I remember that math class, sitting in that math class, and to you math teachers, I'm sorry about this, but I wouldn't have heard a word you said that day because I was so laser focused. And when we walked into that first wrestle off for varsity, that first time, I was ready. And I beat Michael by 2 points. And I was the varsity wrestler at Las Cruces High School. LCHS. Huh? So we got something going, guys. Okay? So for me, again, that was a stepping stone. I continued to wrestle. When I was a junior, I went ahead and went up to 105 because I had really bulked up to 103 by then. And I won the state title. Now, I hit a little bit of a snag in my plan because I was going to go to college. Well, the lowest weight in college was 119 at the time. 118, excuse me. And I was going to naturally just go up to 112. But no college coaches would look at a 112-pounder. They're looking at the 119, 126, 132 because you cut down, all right? So during that summer, I got a chance to wrestle a lot of freestyle. I went to the the 88 Olympic World Trials in the junior division, the high school division. And I met John Smith. John Smith was a 2-time gold medalist. He is now. He wasn't at the time. He was working on that. And he's the head coach for Oklahoma State University for 33 years now. Man, I'm old. But anyway, I asked John, I said, hey, what would you do? Do you go to 112 and there really wasn't any competition, or you jump up to 119? And he said, don't go up to lose. And it scared me. But yet, it also motivated me. I said, let's go, right? Let's go. So there I went, man. I'm 111 pounds now. I've been hitting the iron, right? I'm going to wrestle 119. So I would get on the scale my senior year, and I would put all my sweats on. I would get a pound bag of M&Ms and a 2-liter of soda, and I'd step on the scale. And there was all these guys over here cutting from 126, 130 pounds down to 119. And I'm, just playing head games. I went into the state tournament that year. I was 33-0. And the returning state champion at 112 had moved up to 119. And he had one loss. His name was Robert Marcus. He was a great wrestler. And I just remember there was kind of a storyline, if you will, that was put together by the Albuquerque Journal. Albuquerque was about 220 miles north of us. And they wanted to play on this narrative of me, the cowboy in black, the villain coming into town. And there he is standing up, white hat, white vest, star on his chest. He was the hometown guy. What they didn't know is he outweighed me by about 14 pounds, right? Walking around. And I embraced that. One of the other things I had in my corner was my dad. Here's a picture that he did an article on my dad, because my dad, again, wonderful man, he came out and actually started competing again, because we'd go to these big tournaments all across the United States, and he wrestled in the open division. And when I would wrestle in the junior or the high school division, and we would practice together. So, as I progressed in my on into the state tournament, there was this big buildup, okay? And just like the script was written, it was Robert Marcus and I in the state finals. And I blew my knee out. The ACL snapped so loud the people in the front row just... And all of a sudden, my well-laid plans, what do I do? This is my life. This can't be happening now. And in a bit of arrogance, I hadn't talked to a lot of colleges, because I had four or five colleges I wanted to go to, the top 5. Now, again, I say my arrogance because of the fact that I didn't realize these teams had already recruited really deep at 118 pounds. And they probably weren't going to recruit me if I'd have won 17 state titles. And now here I was without signing a letter of intent, with no knee and no college. Disappointment set in. But yet, I was the kind of guy, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to move forward. So I said, let's go, let's go, let's go. We did the surgery. I did the rehab. I took a gap year between my senior year and when I went to college. And I was good friends with the University of New Mexico head coach. I knew some of his sons and had wrestled with some of his sons. And they were Division I. And so off I go to UNM after a year. For me, going to UNM was amazing. I was back on track. Yet, I walked into a Division I college wrestling room, and it was like I just started wrestling. It was a different level. But understand, I had bulked up to 116 pounds by now. Right? I'm huge, pretty big. Their 118-pounder was a returning All-American. He was cutting down from 140. He was stronger. He was quicker. He had more experience. And come to find out, they hadn't fixed my knee. They'd done a surgery that most good doctors had quit doing. They did an actual exterior support and not a replacement of the ACL. And so right away, my knee continued to just give. The first week of school, they had a dance. And it was kind of to get the freshmen to meet people. Right, you're new in the dorm and everything. And so I go in there, and I'm pretty at home on a dance floor. And by the way, I'm subbing in for dance tomorrow again. Let's go. So I go in there and I meet this girl. Man, her name was Kim. She was amazing. She stood about this tall. She was an athlete. She just had her knees replaced, or not replaced, but repaired too. And so we had lots to talk about. And then I got to dance with her. I was smitten. Whew. So back in the wrestling room, I'm having decisions to make of, what do I do here? I don't know that I can go through the surgery again and another year of rehab to hope that I can do this. And I also fell head over heels for this girl, which I'd never done before either. And so all of a sudden, my goals and my plans became cloudy. And as my disappointment grew, I found out that, you know what? I need to walk away from wrestling. I don't have the heart for it. Wait, next one. There we go. But, chapter 3. When a door closes, another one opens. Let's go. I'd always wanted to rodeo, but wrestling was the first and foremost thing in my life. And all my friends rodeoed, and they weren't athletes, so I knew I could be better than them, right? So I poured that same intensity and that same drive into trying to learn to be the best bull rider I could be. And I took to it right away. Now at the same time, Kim and I are talking about our life together. But there's one caveat. Kim had dated a gentleman through high school. And he had gone into the military after high school and then went away to Desert Storm. And he was coming back. Wait, hold on. No, it's okay for a second here. Hold on. And I felt the only right thing was for her to tell him in person that we were going to get married, that we were going to spend the rest of our life together. I mean, that's what you should do, right? She was close with his family still. So as I went on the rodeo trail, school ended, she went back home, I went on the rodeo trail. Again, singularly focused. I'm going to be a professional bull rider. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And then days turned into weeks turned into months. And I couldn't get a hold of her. I'd call her, hey, I'm 200 miles away, I can come. I'll stop by. I've got a day before the next rodeo, let me come in. And we'll just hang out. I got to work. There's all these weird things, and my stomach just started going in knots. What's going on here? And I was in a big bull ride in Albuquerque, and I ran into her roommate. And I remember saying, hey, I talked to Kim, and man, she's acting weird. What's going on? She goes, I was in her wedding last weekend. Yeah. Ouch. And I was heartbroken. And I was devastated. And so this hole that I had from wrestling that I had filled with bull riding, the hole was too big for bull riding. I couldn't cover it up anymore. And so I started self-medicating. I started forgetting my moral principles. I started living for self. That's the best way I lived for Trevon. That was it. And if you got in the way, you paid the price. I did good in bull riding. I mean, I did pretty good. Hit the space. Bull riding to me was like wrestling, except I didn't have to do cardio. Right? It's all about the hips. You just got to bring your hips to the party. All right? So to me, it was natural. One thing led to another, and now living this life of self, I was chasing a dream still, but it was a dream selfishly based. And so as I shot, I got to the finals. I got to the North American Rodeo Commission finals, World Finals in my third year, and which is, for those of you who don't understand rodeo, it's kind of like the semi-pros, right? And then after that, I moved. I moved to Stephenville, Texas, and got my PRCA permit. And I lived with two bull riders that made it in the finals, Adam and Gilbert Carrillo, some of the founding members of the PBR. And I lived with them, and my goal was to learn from them, and this was my life. Until Claremore, Oklahoma. I drew a bull called Skulls Patrol. He'd been to the finals 4 times. And I got to the rodeo. I was all alone. All my traveling partners were still in the hospital. Right? So I had nobody. I was the only one that stayed healthy enough to keep going. And I got on this bull. I made a good bull ride, pulled my bull rope, stepped off, and he put his horn right in the middle of my back into the arena. And all I can remember is the ambulance is in the middle of the arena. They got me on a backboard and they got oxygen on me, and I'm trying to rip the oxygen mask. I've got sand from the arena floor in my mouth. I can't breathe, and they're trying to shove an oxygen mask on me. And so we take this trip which normally I would have enjoyed a quick trip in an ambulance just because sirens and all that. But no, I can't feel my feet. And I'm laying under the lights in the emergency room. And I remember looking across and seeing the nurse on the phone with my mom as she's crying, saying, I don't know if he'll ever walk again. And so I sat there and I said, okay. And I looked up in the lights and I remember saying, God, what do you have? What do you want with me? What do you want with my life? Oh. Pretty soon my blood pressure dropped, and they were able to give me a muscle relaxant. The x-rays came back negative. I had not severed my spine. But what had happened is I had bruised it, and it had basically clinched up, and the nerves had been blocked, and all of a sudden I felt the tingling down my feet, my legs again, and I could move my toes. I rodeoed for a couple more months. Yeah, that's what you do. I'd already entered the rodeos. Paid the fees. I had my last 4th of July run, I hit 8 rodeos in 4 days, and I only got knocked out twice. It was pretty good. But I remember thinking, this is not what I want for my life. This is not what I want for my life. There's something more. And I moved back to Las Cruces, New Mexico, and became a police officer. Now, how are we doing on time? 2 minutes. I'm gonna jump forward. Okay. I could tell you tons of stories, guys. I could tell you tons of stories about being a cop. I loved it. It was fun. It was intense. And one thing that's for sure, go to the next picture. I still have the same haircut. But this is when Prudence really came back into my life. As a police officer, prudence is so important because you're to enforce the law, but because it's the law doesn't mean it's exactly what you need to do. Right? Thomas Aquinas, an Italian priest and an influential philosopher and theologian, believed that a prudent person does these 3 things. First, must seek and take counsel. We must receive input. 2, we must judge that input soundly. Also, being able to look at what you believe is right as we make these decisions. And 3, we must act. We have to act. Without act, it is nothing. It's not prudence without the action. Now, I did a lot of things in my life that were prudent. And I did a lot of things in my life that weren't prudent, right? But the action is where it's at. We must act, but we can't lie to ourselves.
We lie to ourselves. We don't tell ourselves the way things really are. And when we do that, then we can't fix our problems. If we can't fix our problems, we're not going to improve. So we have to be truthful to ourselves. You have to stop rationalizing, stop making excuses, stop telling yourself little watered down assessments of where you're really at. Tell yourself the truth so that you can get where you want to go and be who you want to be who you should be when you do what you know you should do, when you pay attention to the little things, when you implement discipline. True and unflinching and unmitigated discipline in your life. When you stop trying to find a sweatless solution. When you look for weaknesses to work on. And all that starts when you stop lying to yourself. That's when you can become who you know you should be. You tell yourself the truth about where you are so you can make sure you are in the right place. And if you're not in the right place, then you can get yourself on a path to get there. The path of discipline, the path of hard work, and the path of truth.
Next one. So, chapter 4, happily ever after. I don't have time to get into what brought me to this moment, and boy, it's a story in and of itself. But I will tell you this. I am blessed beyond measure. Go to the next one. Right? Can I get an amen? Prudence. It seems abstract, yet it's not. We have to be honest with ourselves. Prudence comes where we're honest with ourselves. We seek counsel. We make the decision knowing from our barometer of what's right and what's wrong, and then we must act. My challenge to you, guys and gals, is be prudent. Thank you.